The person who has made the biggest impact on my life is my dad, Robert Bobby Rodriguez. My dad started making an impact on my life since the day I was born. However, it has taken me 40 years to become fully aware of how much of an impact he really made on me. My dad was born in 1948 in Sonora, Texas, one of 12 children. He wasn't the oldest, he wasn't the youngest, but he was born somewhere in between. At a young age, my dad and his family moved to Plainview, Texas. While my dad was in school, he met my mom, Isabel. Back in the 1960s, dating was somewhat different than it is today. My dad did not live in my mom's neighborhood, so after school he ran across town, beat the bus there, waited for my mom to get off the bus, walked her home 2 blocks, and then ran back across town to go home. My dad did this for about a year or so, and then he finally saved up enough money and bought a very used car. However, my mom's parents didn't allow her to ride in the car with my dad. So my dad and his best friend drove behind the bus to my mom's neighborhood. After school, my mom would get off the bus, and my dad would walk her home those same 2 blocks, while his best friend would drive behind them. My dad did this for about another year or so. Once my dad graduated, he married my mom in May of 1969, and this was also the time of the Vietnam War. My dad enlisted in the Army in September of 1969 and was deployed to Vietnam in 1970. When talking to my dad about the war, I often asked him how he made it out alive when so many people did not make it out alive. And he always said to me that he always put his trust in God, he prayed daily, he stayed focused on his mission at hand, and he just knew that he had a family to get back home to. After my dad returned home from the service, he graduated from South Plains College, and he got a job as a mail carrier. He did this for 30 years before his retirement. My mom and dad have a total of 4 children, all girls, and we're all 5 years apart. I am the second child born to them. Growing up, I was a daddy's girl, but in all reality, we're all daddy's girls. But I was his tomboy daughter, the son he never had. I loved hanging out with my dad. After work, he would come home, pick me up on his motorcycles, and we would head over to my grandpa's house to check on him. And then just me and my dad would go off on long motorcycle rides. My dad was just a cool guy to hang out with, and life was just easy around him. My dad was also a Little League baseball coach on an all-boy team that I got to help out on, at the young age of 7. He was a coach for the little team called the Astros from 1976 to 1985. He loved coaching baseball. He often paid for several of his players to play baseball because some of their families couldn't afford the league fees. And he would often pick them up in the back of his pickup truck whenever they needed a ride to practice. But coaching the team wasn't about winning or losing for him. It was about teaching those young boys life lessons and being a positive role model for them in their lives. While my dad conducted practice, my mom would cook out there at the park so that those boys would have some dinner in their bellies before they went home. My dad also served on the local school board for approximately 10 years and served on various boards in the community in our church. My dad loved his community and the people in it, but most of all, my dad loved his family. As far as I can remember, my dad always put our needs before his own. My dad was happy when his family was happy and healthy. He was strong in his faith and always encouraged us to turn to God when things were going good in our lives and to seek God for guidance and clarity when things weren't going so good in our lives. My dad loved my mom unconditionally, and you could see the love he had for my mom when he looked at her. Every holiday was a major holiday in our household. My dad showered my mom with tokens of affection year-round, and he did the same for us. He loved us girls unconditionally. He was not afraid to tell us that he loved us, give us hugs freely and often, and he communicated with us. I could talk to my dad for hours about nothing and everything all at once. My dad never seemed uninterested in a topic. If I liked it, well then, my dad loved it. 25 years ago, my dad's first grandchild was born, a boy. My dad was on cloud 9, and soon after, more grandchildren started coming along. And my parents' home now turned into Grandma and Grandpa's house, the place where food and love was plenty, and there weren't any rules. My dad loved having all 15 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren there at any given time. My dad got really sick in December of 2017, and he died on February 9th, 2018. During his illness, he spent about a month in the hospital. During this time, my dad had approximately 200 different people show up to visit with him, and that number is not an exaggeration. He had family and friends show up from all over Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Nevada, and tons of phone calls and Facebook messages. He even had several of his old Little League baseball players stop by to see their coach one last time. My mom, sisters, and I would step out of the room and let the visitors have their one-on-one time with my dad to say their goodbyes. And they all came out with tears in their eyes. These 2 months taught me something about my dad that I did not know. I knew my dad loved my mom and his girls like crazy. And I knew he loved his grandkids even more. What I didn't know was that my dad loved other people and made an impact on their lives. At my dad's wake, there were hundreds of people that stopped by to pay their respects. And at the funeral, there were even more people. People such as childhood friends, work friends, church friends, the mayor, my dad's college professor. I know, how old was he? The lady who used to own the cafe downtown, which my dad would take me on his day off for breakfast, that closed about 20 years ago. I could go on and on with the number of people who showed up. But the words of sympathy were the same. Oh my gosh, how I loved your dad. Your dad was a good man with the biggest heart and the biggest smile. Bobby always took time to stop and say hi to me and just visit with me. Or I always asked your dad to pray for me, because I knew if he said he was going to pray for me, then he was going to do it. Your dad was genuinely a good man, and I will miss him. My dad taught me to trust in God. He set the standard of what I should look for in a husband, how to raise my kids, take time to talk to people, and to really listen to them. My dad not only loved us, but he loved his neighbor as well. I miss our daily talks, but I lean heavily on the memories of us together. I hope to make a positive impact on others the way my dad did. And when my time for my funeral comes, I hope that church is just as full as it was for my dad.